Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Larissa Couts, the President and CEO of Melwood. Larissa, thank you so much for coming on and helping us out today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And Larissa, you're here because we're highlighting organizations in the DC region that prioritize workplace health, not just about physical health. That's not the only thing we're talking about. We're talking about work relationships and psychologically safe environments. So before we get off on that, tell us about Melwood. Tell us about what you do. Explain it to us.
Absolutely. So Melwood is a nonprofit organization that was started in the DC area 60 years ago by a group of parents who had adult kids with disabilities who knew that they could do work, get paid for work, and become economically independent. So now, 60 years later, we're actually a family of companies that focuses on workforce development and training and offering services for the government and other companies around this area.
So when you hear the phrase workplace health, what does that mean to you? Explain why it's so important within Melwood. Why is it so important? Why is it a priority for you?
Absolutely. So Melwood has always had a large percentage of employees who have disabilities. And when you think about inclusion, when you think about health, you do think about physical health, as you mentioned, but also mental health, psychological safety, and particularly for individuals with disabilities, we want to make sure that we help them thrive in the workforce and be the best employees that they can be. And so we focus a lot on being all in on health, which, like you said, includes psychological safety.
Mm-hmm. And it's a culture of well-being. It's something that you promote. Is that something that you work to get out when you talk about maybe trying to recruit new employees, get the message out about Melwood? Can you explain how you go about getting that message out into the community around the DC region that you're the place to be for a culture of well-being within your workforce?
Absolutely. I know in some of our past kind of marketing, we've talked about, let us show you how. Let us show you how to work with individuals of all types of abilities and disabilities. And we start from recruitment. We start from our job postings being as open and as inclusive and inviting as possible, taking out things that really have nothing to do with the particular job or the skill that you're going to do. And it goes through the interview process where, if people get nervous, we send questions ahead of time. It's not supposed to be a gotcha moment. It's supposed to be a come and show your best self moment. So that continues through orientation. It continues through management, through assessment, through training. At every step of the way, we emphasize safety, inclusion, helping to kind of dispel the anxieties of our employees so they can thrive and be their best selves.
And what does that do for morale when you focus on having a psychologically safe environment and a culture of well-being? That's not just about physical health, but about everything else, the whole person. What does that do for morale? People must feel safer and better while working.
Absolutely. When you can dispel the sort of the anxieties, the imposter syndrome, the things that a lot of us face and struggle with, when you can come to work without those things being present, you can just take a deep breath and settle in and just do the job that you're there to do. And we see that from the top to the bottom of our organization. 24% of our leadership identify as having a disability. We have a large number of individuals with disabilities on our board of directors, all the way to our entry-level positions.
How do you support employees' mental health, especially during times of high stress, which in the DC region, it can be a high-stress atmosphere, we know that. So how do you go about supporting employees and making sure that there's contact between employees and leadership?
Well, we work hard to both make sure that we have inclusion through having the ability to do remote work and hybrid work, but also being cognizant of the fact that sometimes you don't have connection when you have that, and you don't have everyone in the office at all times. So we use different tools, both in meetings and in the way we interact with different kinds of communication to make sure we're focused on the positive. We lead off meetings asking to talk about wins, but also to talk about things that you're struggling with, whether it's at work or in your personal life, and really focusing on being vulnerable and being present whenever we are together.
Would you say that the idea of having an all-around healthy workforce and culture is a newer idea? In other words, do you think it's become more important, more of a focus for businesses all around just in the last few years? It seems like just in the last few years it's become really important for so many people.
Well, so it's interesting. I think that it goes up and down. I think historically when you look at the times when we need more labor in a particular industry or when companies are struggling to find the supply of workers they need, we do start to pay more attention to accommodations, inclusion, kind of workplace safety. I think that the pandemic certainly heightened the anxiety that people were feeling, and people felt very isolated. So in order to really get the employees, retain your employees, and get the best, I do think companies are focusing on it. And they see it as the return on investment. They see their company thriving, and we've known that for 60 years, but it's nice to see others focusing in on it more too.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about employees having anxiety, we were just talking before we started taping that you have a fidget spinner, and that's sort of part of the empathy. I mean, you're a leader in the organization. You want to make sure people feel safe and comfortable if they have anxiety or stress. You want to make sure that people feel safe speaking out, and that's a subtle but important little symbol that you have in your hand there, because you're actually showing people, hey, I have stress too. This is what I do to help cope with that. It seems like that is a symbol. It's a small one, but it goes along with the theme of what we're talking about.
Absolutely. I don't hide the fact that I have anxiety, I have depression, and I have post-traumatic stress that I struggle with, but I did hide it for a long time. I feel like it's only been the last few years when I've achieved the position of president and CEO that I not only started feeling more comfortable, I think, in my position and where I am to be more vulnerable, but also felt like it's a mandate now, because I know that I hid it for so long, because I felt like I'd be looked down on, or I wouldn't be taken as seriously, or my work would be questioned more. And so I really encourage all leaders to lead with vulnerability and empathy and talk about your struggles. I have a son who's on the autism spectrum. I talk about that because I know so many of my employees and other people struggle with being a caregiver, as well as a full-time employee. And I think giving people the permission to be more open about that, to reach out to colleagues for empathy, for support, just creates a much more inclusive and psychologically safe work environment. I mean, you're at work more often than you are at home, and so it hopefully is a good place to be. Yeah,
and you treat employees with that mindset. You treat employees as a whole person, not just as a person at work.
Exactly, exactly. And that's how we retain them. That's how we have the best products and the best services for our customers. And I do hope a lot more companies take that to heart. If an
organization or a business in the DC area came up to you and said, we really want to focus on improving our workplace health and culture, what would your advice be if someone asked you for that?
First, I'd say I'm all in, and Melwood would be happy to come and talk to you about it. We certainly have been invited to other companies to talk to employees, talk to the HR department, really talk about what it means to create a system of inclusion. But I would really start by having them talk to their own employees directly. Make it safe to talk about struggles, make it safe to do surveys and talk about what would make your life easier at work. Sometimes those changes are so small and they're so inexpensive. The average kind of accommodation is under $500, and just think like that's all you'd have to spend to keep an employee who might otherwise leave or burn out, or other things like that.
All right, good stuff. Larissa, thank you so much.
Of course, thanks for having me.
That's Larissa Couch, the president and CEO of Melwood. You're watching the Leadership in Action series. I'm Nick Iannelli, and for more on this discussion, visit WTOP.com and search Kaiser Permanente.